Good morning, YouTube. This morning we're at Sunset Beach in North Carolina. What I'm going to be doing today is shooting some long exposures of this pier here, and as well as just the water in general. So we're supposed to get thunderstorms in a few hours, and I'm hopeful. There's an old adage in the sailing industry that red sky at night, sailors delight, red sky at morn, sailors be warned. So I'm thinking with thunderstorms rolling in, surely that means we'll get a red sky, but I don't know, I'm not a sailor, so don't plan your next nautical journey on my advice. But whether we get the color or not, as you can see here, it's high tide, and we have some really nice reflections from the receding water after the waves. So I think there's a lot of interest just between the sand and the pier, and if there's any light in the clouds, that'll reflect as well. So I'm gonna do two compositions. I'm probably gonna do a square crop of this image here, and then I'm gonna shoot a pano of a section of the pier if we get that good light in the sky, which it's starting to look like we may. So that's what I'm gonna go for, and when I do the pano, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stitch 5 to 6 images, but it's really important with the moving waves that you completely smooth that water. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna time how long it takes for a wave to enter the scene and then come all the way to shore. And that, because every image, I wanna make sure that there's no waves that are gonna change from scene to scene, or sorry, frame to frame. And then when I go to stitch, you'll get these weird lines that are difficult to remove later. So I need to completely smooth that water. And the benefit of that too is that you might, as you can see on the shore here, you might get a little bit of that shadow of the pier on the water, which is really nice. So I'm thinking it'll be about 10 seconds per frame, and then I'll probably do 5 or 6 frames. Try and keep it close to a minute so that the light doesn't change that much between the start and the end of the pano. So I'm gonna go ahead and get set up, and let's hope for the best. All right, well, screw that adage. No sunrise. But all is not lost, because as you can see, we do have some nice clouds, and there's kind of like a grayish blue light coming in. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna throw on the 10-stop filter, and I'm gonna do very long exposures, and I'm thinking maybe 1-2 minutes per frame, and then stitch together for the pano of the pier. I think it's gonna look really nice because the pier on a long exposure like that reflects in the water from its shadow. So even though there's not any light in the sky, I think with a long enough exposure, if we smooth out the water and smooth out the clouds, it could be a very interesting composition. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw the 10-stop on and see if we can get a nice pano of this pier with the smoothed out water.
In recent videos, we discussed how you have to make the best of the conditions that you get. I had walked into this shoot hoping for epic skies. That's just not what I got, and to make matters worse, I had my camera inside in the air conditioning overnight. When I brought the camera out to this hot, humid beach, every glass surface, and likely my sensor, were completely coated in condensation. That is what gave the soft, misty look you're about to see in the final image. I decided to just embrace this mistiness, and instead go for a high-key, minimalist image. Because the condensation on my lens was even across the surface, the scene just looked hazy, rather than as if there were mist or fog, which would be heavier at the top of the image than the bottom. To fix this, I went ahead and added a Lee mist graduated filter, so that the top of the image had a stronger mist effect, as you would expect in nature. To get the high-key look that I was after, I created a very long exposure, exposing to the far right without clipping any highlights. This gave me very bright highlights and plenty of shadow detail. The lights on the pier are the perfect anchor to draw you into the scene. I warmed them up to sort of contrast against this cold blue light in the scene. My favorite part of this image are the birds and the fishermen on the pier. They are just static enough to maintain their form, but active enough to show the pier coming to life in the early morning. Their slightly soft silhouettes perfectly impress upon the viewer the slow, peaceful pace of the pier's inhabitants. Overall, I'm very pleased with this image and feel that although it's not what I set out to capture, it's still a strong image. The second morning treated us to much more favorable conditions. The haze in the sky caught just enough light to fill the scene with color. The receding waves captured that color brilliantly, filling the entire scene with a soft pastel light. To make the most of these conditions, I utilized a long exposure, allowing both the clouds and water to go soft. I wanted the color of the scene to be the subject. This image could just as easily be a painting as it is a photograph. I may even try printing this on watercolor paper just to emphasize the soft light. I chose a square crop here because I feel like it gave the best overall balance between the ocean and the sky. And when you have a peaceful image like this, I feel like being completely balanced is one of the most important factors in the success of the overall image. In last week's video, I said that I wanted to do more intentional camera movements, and it was a technique that I had thought a lot about but hadn't really tried. I wish I could say this was an attempt at that. This is what's called unintentional camera movements. I had set up on a 10-second exposure on the pier, and then just as I was getting towards the end of that exposure, I noticed the light behind me was popping off. So I quickly whipped my camera around in just the last second or two of this exposure, and this is the end result. I have to say, I really like this image. I wish I had done this on purpose so that I could take credit for it, but what we have here is about 8 seconds of the pier, giving us nice sharp detail of the pier, and then about 2 seconds of a beautiful sunrise in the exact opposite direction. This image, for me, was the shot of the trip. I walked past this scene every day on this trip. Each time I thought to myself, this could be an image. But each day the light just wasn't quite right. On the first day, I got there too late and the light was too harsh. On the second day, the sky was full cloud and there was no warmth or contrast to the scene. But finally, on my last day, I got lucky. The haze in the atmosphere gave just enough sun flare on the left-hand side of the image to draw you into the scene without blowing out the highlights. From there, the pier and tall grasses catching that soft, warm, directional light bring you across the scene. The very edge of the image ends at the water, giving you the perfect balance of everything that makes this beautiful place so special. I went with a 4:1 aspect ratio, which is something I usually wouldn't do. However, for this scene, it was all just too beautiful to remove any of the edges. This was the perfect way to end this trip. That's going to do it for this week's video. I hope you enjoyed the video as well as the images. This is a location that I cannot wait to get back to. Fortunately, my family lives out here, so there's going to be plenty more opportunities to shoot this gorgeous seascape. Let me know in the comments what you think about the images. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing to this channel. Otherwise, I hope you have a fantastic weekend. Now get out there and make some images.